Recently, Gary Neville, Keane and Ian Wright were filming an episode of The Overlap, one of the greatest football-related shows on at the minute. In the recent episode, the topic of doping got brought up, and they were having a discussion about how in their playing careers, they felt there were a lot of instances in which they've experienced doping with teams that they have come across, in particular, Italian clubs. This got me thinking, how prominent is drug doping in football? And since Gary and Roy last played, technology and drugs have only advanced. This left me intrigued to dig deeper into the topic of drug doping in the modern game. In sports, doping has been a very huge part of many controversies and competitions. Examples of this have been in cycling, when 7-time Tour de France winner Lance Armstrong was stripped of all his titles and banned from the sport, or when Russia were banned from the 2018 Olympics and fined $15 million as they had been found guilty for the doping of their athletes. Either way, it's common knowledge that doping is well and truly alive in the world of sports. When the competitors would do anything for that extra edge, why wouldn't they take drugs to improve their abilities? Let's look into how this has affected football in the past and take a dive if this is happening in today's game, right under our noses. One of the most famous and an old example of doping is when during the 1994 World Cup, Marradona played in just 2 games before doping tests found ephedrine in his urine sample. He was kicked out of the World Cup and again suspended for 15 months. Maradona's third positive drug test, which came after a season-opening victory by Boca Juniors in 1997. This led him to retire. Marradona is known for being one of the greatest footballers of all time, but he has been found guilty for doping 4 times. Does this make his achievements invalid, and does it take away from how brilliant of a footballer he is? Another high-profile case of doping is in Pep Guardiola during his time in Italy. Before becoming a renowned manager, Pep Guardiola was a successful player. However, in 2001, while playing for Brescia in Italy, Guardiola tested positive for the banned substance, nandrolone. Although he denied the allegations, he received a 4-month ban. Does this mean that Pep Guardiola is for doping, and would this also tarnish his career and make all of his achievements invalid too? Nandrolone is a form of anabolic steroid which increases strength in the bones and also increases recovery time, ultimately giving a player a very unfair advantage. Other players who have been found with nandrolone in their systems are Jaap Stam and Edgar Davids. However, Pep Guardiola is not the only high-profile individual who has been convicted of doping in football. A big name that has had 2 instances of it is Rio Ferdinand. In 2003, the Manchester United defender missed a routine drug test. He was later banned for 8 months for failing to provide a sample. And again in 2013, when he accidentally missed a drugs test while playing for Queen's Park Rangers, leading to a suspension of 1 game and a £25,000 fine. Although there is no concrete evidence of drugs being found in Rio's blood, it's worth noting that for one player to have 2 separate occasions in which they miss drug tests, you do have to asking questions. Most of these cases get thrown under the rug and do not get spoken about. People are very quick to forget about these instances, and I think a major factor in today's game of corruption. There are so many players in world football who have been caught out doping, and it begs the question of how many have been doping and just not got caught. Also, you have to take into account the people that are doing the doping are footballers at the end of the day, with essentially a huge pot of money, and they will do anything to be able to get ahead of their opponents. With the money and resources a lot of these players have, and the incredible advances in the pharmaceutical world, there is a definite chance of these high-profile players getting away with such huge, frowned-upon crimes. A more recent account of these rules being broken at the heights of football is a very famous story of the current Liverpool squad. In late 2019, it was reported that some Liverpool players were using asthma medication, specifically salbutamol, which raised questions about whether it was being used legitimately or to enhance performance. Salbutamol is a common medication used to treat asthma and other respiratory conditions by opening up the airways, allowing easier breathing. However, it can also have performance-enhancing effects, particularly in endurance sports, by increasing oxygen intake. What is strange about this story is that the average UK rate of asthma is 12% of people. However, in the Liverpool squad, it was reported 63% of them were asthmatic and would require the salbutamol. Although this may just be a coincidence and a conspiracy, it is very suspicious, and I think that this should have been investigated at the time and brought more into the public eye. Clearly, it hasn't gone any further because we have heard very little about this. And what are the chances of 63% of professional athletes in the Liverpool squad having asthma? Ultimately, in football, there are loads of cases of doping and suspected doping, but I cannot go through all of it this week. I've heard Marseille have also been pretty convincingly tied to doping. Their Champions League winning team that beat AC Milan in the final used illegal substances according to quite a few of their players. Every investigation since has been closed or swept under the rug in order to not discredit the sport. Even Arsene Wenger have said when signing players from a certain club in the 90s, their blood numbers were always really crazy, and it was obvious that clubs were taking part in widespread doping. He never mentions the club, but I'm pretty sure it was Juve. There is a common theme with doping in football, and it is that every single time there are accusations, it just gets thrown under the rug and never spoken about. Nothing ever seems to be investigated, and nothing ever seems to happen. I believe all the boards of football need to clamp down on this, and I think it is going on more than what we imagine. Not only in the past, but in the modern game. The level of endurance all the players in the Premier League have is completely insane, and is very inhuman. If you want me to make a part 2 on this video and dive deeper into the rabbit hole of doping in football, I can look at some other doping scandals in football, and I would definitely be up for making a follow-up video on more instances, as this is incredibly interesting to me, and I think this needs more light in the sport. However, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.